Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome back to Follow the Money, our show on SaharaTV. I'm your host, Milton Allimadi. And on this show, as viewers now know, we follow the money in African countries. We want to know what happens with public funds. In our last two shows, we looked at corruption in Uganda. And our guest was former Minister Zoe Bakoko, and she's with us back in the studio today. But briefly, I also want to announce next week's show. We're going to be looking at Gabon. A Wall Street Journal article on February 25th reported that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, as well as the Justice Department, is looking at the flow of funds from Gabon into the United States. And it wants to see if these funds can be linked to the family of the president, Ali Bongo, and to his chief of staff, to see if it's stolen funds from public monies. And we'll keep you posted when we do a show on Gabon next week. But without further ado, let's welcome our guest back today. How are you?
I'm fine. Good afternoon, viewers. I'm glad to be back on this show, Mr. Milton.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You've been very gracious with your time. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand recently you attended an event called Opportunity Africa, where you had the opportunity to also meet with former President Bill Clinton. And you spoke to him briefly about the situation in Uganda. Tell us the setting, what you told him, and what his reaction was.
Yeah, Opportunity Africa is a meeting which is organized by the senator from Delaware, Senator Chris Coons. This was the third conference. I attended the one of last year and this year. And I had a very rare opportunity to meet with President Clinton. Okay. He was the keynote speaker for that meeting. And I spoke to him about Uganda because, as you know, recently there's been events which happened.
Yes.
For example, and this was discussed too in the meeting, the Public Order Management Act,
yes,
which is gagging not only the NGOs, but also opposition and people who want...
For viewers not familiar, tell us briefly what the Public Order Management Bill is.
What it really is doing is that if there are 2 or 3 of you who want to organize a meeting, yes, you have to seek permission from the police. And this week, actually, the former mayor of Kampala,
the capital,
Right Honorable Lukwago Areas, was going to address the community to take, he's been impeached.
Right.
And it is irregular, the way they impeached him, and it is wrong. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to take this to the people. And the meeting was supposed to be today. And the next one would be next Sunday. Mm-hmm. And the police have denied him that opportunity to go and talk to the people.
Right.
They are saying that law does not allow him. He should have given them information 3 days earlier.
Right.
And even if you give the information 3 days earlier, if the police does not allow you, you won't be able to address.
So the purpose is to suppress.
It is suppression, and it is a gagging the opposition, actually. Okay. And also anybody else who is going to be, as they say in quote, against the government.
It sounds like something from the Stalin era in the old Soviet Union.
True. If you had seen my article, which I wrote maybe 3-4 years ago, where I was talking about Uganda going the Zairian way, it was on the Observer. People can look for it. And I was saying that there was a lot in common with what happened in Russia in the Stalin era, with what's really happening now in Uganda. And the second one was about the anti-homosexuality law. Yeah. And those were the 2 issues that I was discussing with President Clinton. Because he told me in the discussion that President Museveni had actually assured him that he wasn't going to sign the law. Mm-hmm. And when he did, he actually said that it would not be implemented. And so I told him, have you seen the reports where some gays are being burnt on the streets? And he was like, wow.
Okay. Let me get something right. After the bill was signed into law by General Museveni, mm-hmm, he had another conversation with Bill Clinton.
Yes.
and assured him that even though he had signed it into law,
it would not be implemented. And I don't understand how this would work. Because once...
And you're saying it's already being implemented because
of course,
people are being
burnt on the streets, and you know that there's exodus of gays who want to run away from Uganda. Many of them are already going into Kenya and other countries, and they are scared. People are generally scared because if someone accuses you, whether you are gay or not, if you are accused that you are gay, then people just come and evict you from your house, or they will beat you up. And the penalties are very severe, even for people who know that this person could be a gay person and they have housed the person. It is really not a good law.
You're saying, in fact, somebody could accuse you of being gay based on a separate quarrel that
That's
you might
right.
have had.
And you know how things work in Uganda. You remember how things worked years ago, where people just shout "Uyo," even if you were not a thief, and you'll be subjected to street justice and beaten up or killed.
Now, before you tell us Clinton's reaction, I would like to ask you a question also. Did Clinton tell you, if he asked General Museveni, why did you sign it into law if you knew it would not be, or thought it would not be implemented?
We didn't get into that detail because we are supposed to have a follow-up meeting, possibly in DC, and I think we will report that at a later date.
Okay, so what was his reaction then? Tell us.
He was actually very shocked, and he's like, I can't believe this. I said, I don't recognize the guy myself, whom I knew many years ago. But
you're talking about General Museveni?
Yes, and then of course I told him he has nothing to run on. He has no ticket to run on in 2016. He has to become a hero of the people. But the most interesting part of this anti-homosexuality law is that I actually saw a report where for this month, there's going to be 97 criminal cases which are going to be tried by the High Court. And half of them are actually murder cases. And then I think 32 of them are defilement. And all those defilement cases, none of them is actually by a homosexual. And so for me...
Defilement. Some viewers may not be familiar with that term.
Defilement is having a sexual relationship or intercourse with a minor.
Okay, so it's a pedophilia.
Okay. You can talk about pedophiles, yes, but there are people who actually abuse children. And so if you look at all these court cases, even when I was a minister in charge of children, there was not one single case which was brought where a homosexual had abused a minor, because this is the big fear which was created among the people.
I see your point. One of the justifications used
for this
by
law,
the regime for signing this law was that it would prevent
the
homosexuals from abusing minors.
Children.
But you're saying, in fact, most of the cases that you've seen being brought to the court has been straight or heterosexual males
abusing
minors.
Children. And so for me, I don't think there was a justification for that law other than a political one, where Museveni is trying to convince the public that he's their hero.
The grassroots, you mean?
Yeah.
Because this law is, in the grassroots, is popular because many people are
very popular. People are scared
of when it comes to issues of homosexuality.
Yeah, people are scared. They think that the homosexuals are on rampage and that they are going to go around everywhere abusing their children, which is totally not true.
So in fact, you're saying the president, General Museveni, is scapegoating them for political purposes, just to get votes.
Right. He's just trying to find a reason to run in 2016. And that's exactly what I told President Clinton.
And what was
then
Clinton's
he's
reaction?
like, oh my gosh, yeah, the guy has been there too long.
So he did say that?
Yes, he sure did.
Did you ask him if at any point he actually did support President Museveni?
Of
And
course,
why?
I know that he did. I
No, but
hosted.
did you get him to say why and why he's changed his position now in terms
What-
of thinking he's been there too long?
Well, he knows it. He says the guy has been there close to 30 years. I mean, that
He did
is-
say that?
Yes, that's the fact. That's the truth.
Okay, now let me ask you in terms of transition in Uganda. The elections are coming in about 2 years now. What do you see in terms of the transition? Will there be peaceful elections
I
in
am
Uganda?
not very
And is that going to be the process of
I'm
transition?
really hoping that NRM is going to listen to the voices of dissent, because from what we are reading and hearing, the opposition is saying that they will not participate in the elections if the laws are not reformed. The electoral laws are not reformed. They are also
Explain that a little bit, the electoral laws. What are the main obstacles right now for...
The main obstacles right now is the Electoral Commission, which is being appointed by General Museveni. The opposition believes that there should be, it should be an independent Electoral Commission, independent of General Museveni,
Right.
which means the opposition and NRM should come together to appoint the people of integrity who can be able to head that the Electoral Commission and organize the elections in Uganda.
Right.
The other thing is, as you know, the laws allow General Museveni and NRM to go around campaigning, but it doesn't allow the opposition to.
Explain.
You can see the same law we just spoke about, the management, the management, public management order law, which is the POM. That law restricts the opposition to go out and campaign.
But it does not apply to the president's
No, it
party.
doesn't.
That's what you're saying.
It doesn't. Because I'll give you another example. Just a few weeks ago in Chankwanji, what happened was the members of parliament decided, the caucus, the NRM caucus,
The ruling party.
decided that Museveni will be the sole candidate in 2016, which should really be the duty of the entire NRM when they have the national...
In terms of electing
Yes.
who should be their flag bearer.
Who should be their flag. But the MPs decided that it will be Museveni. And now they have been given money to go out and they explain why they wouldn't like Right Honorable Mbabazi to...
Who is the prime minister.
Who is the prime minister and also the secretary general of the party.
And had
to
some
contest.
designs himself.
And he also has a wish, not just a desire, but he really thinks it's now time for the president to pass on the baton, because it's really getting...
After 30 years, he wants his turn.
Because, you know, a few years ago, when I was still in the 6th Parliament, Kizza Besigye, who was Museveni's doctor, had come out with a paper and said, I think it is time to contest against Museveni. And Babazi said, no, don't jump the queue.
At that time.
At that time. But now I think he sees the time is running out. And actually, there's no queue. And the guy is not about to let go. And so in Chankwanji, according to Museveni, he had access to intelligence reports, which is showing that Mbabazi has been building base so that he can contest in 2016. And
He brought this up at this,
Yeah,
it was a retreat
it
of
was
the
a retreat,
ruling party.
Yeah, which they have all the time. I attended some of the retreats too when I was still in parliament.
Okay, so let me ask you, he brought this up, but is it a crime for Mbabazi to...
It's not a crime. Any Ugandan, actually, is entitled to contest as a president. But, you know, it has actually shown what kind of dictator Museveni is. Because many people used to think that he, as he said in quote, in 86,
When he first came
when he
into
first
power.
came into power, he said that he decided to fight a bush war because the leaders were overstaying in power
African
in
leaders
Uganda,
in general.
including Ugandan ones, because Obote had been in power for 8 years, and so was Idi Amin. And then Obote too was about, I think, 3 or 4 years. And so, if you add all that together, Museveni's close to 30 years, surpasses even those. And so now, who really has stayed too long in power? Or who has overstayed in power? So I guess he has flip-flopped on his own word.
But he has in the past said that he has not yet fulfilled his vision for the country.
Of course, according to him, he's the only one who has a vision for Uganda,
And
not anybody else.
You disagree with that
I
statement?
disagree totally with that. You cannot have one person having a vision. And the thing is, when he came to power, we had a 10-point program. And the 10-point increased to 15-point. And now, if you look at the ideology or the political ideology of NRM, it has become so amorphous that nobody can explain it. Just go back and read it, and you will know that there's actually no vision in what they are talking about. He's just meandering and confusing the public so that he can overstay in power.
So what do you suggest the public do then?
Now, the people should, I think anybody is entitled to stand in 2016. But one, I agree with the opposition that the electoral laws must be reformed.
And what if he refuses?
Well, if he refuses, let him stand alone, and then the whole world knows, because there's no reason for other people to participate in elections which are one-sided.
Now, let me ask you, the opposition, is there a plan to come together, perhaps, and
I think more and more now, there is that hope that the opposition is going to come together.
Is hope enough? Is something actually being done?
Yes, something is being done. It will go step by step. Within the 2 years, I'm looking at an opportunity where the opposition is going to come together. We in the diaspora, we are also talking to each other. For example, last Sunday, I had a radio talk show on Fadu. Together with Fadu, Mrs. Mukasa was the anchor. We are now looking at, as women leaders out here, what can we do to bring these men together? And so that all the different organizations which are really in the opposition, how can we bring our energy so that we can march home and give hope to our country and free our country from the dictator?
So on practical terms, when you say the opposition coming together, are we talking about a national convention where all the interested parties...
Soon we are going to have a national convention. But right now we are doing a one-to-one discussion, and we're already having programs on TV, on radio, so that we talk about this.
Now let me ask you, you've talked about this law that prevents people from assembling together. And that law obviously would prevail. Do you think under that circumstances the regime would allow a national convention to take place in Uganda?
It won't. It will not. I don't think they will allow it.
So
but if the public puts a lot of pressure, I think he will, because he will be scared too to see that he doesn't want to lose everything. I believe in that.
So you're implying that if there is transition in Uganda that does not involve him being in leadership, he would still like to stay in Uganda? Is that what you're suggesting?
I don't know what the end product is going to be. The choice will have to come from him. But for now, you can see that that's not what he wants to do. He wants to be the only one. Either he's the one, or nobody has it. What they call in my language, enyako anyako amadava, which means you don't eat, I don't eat, we pour it in the sound. That's his attitude.
Really?
Yeah.
But you think that attitude might change?
I'm not seeing it changing. The older you get, I think people are supposed to get wiser the older they get. But I don't see that in Uganda. I don't see that with Museveni. I was telling this again to the listeners on Sunday. Look at Tata Madiba. Museveni's reason of being the only visionary and the only person who should lead Uganda is that he fought for it. They poured their blood for it.
Right.
Look at Madiba. He was in jail for 27 years. He came. He was elected.
Right.
He only stayed for one term.
He did not
And
use
he
that
did
as
not
justification.
Even use that
Right.
as a justification
Right.
to stay in power.
Right.
And he was able to look beyond and say, you know what, we forgive these things, but we have a truth and reconciliation commission, which is going to help this. And that is the kind of attitude I would have expected out of Museveni, but I don't think so. But he still continues to justify that they have lost blood, his brother poured blood, and therefore they can stay in power forever and ever. Amen.
Now, let me try the earlier question in a different way this time. Do you think General Museveni still has time to make some changes that would make it acceptable for there to be a transition which would allow him to remain in Uganda?
I don't think so. Just look at what has happened in the last few weeks. He still has been so angry because Mbabazi, according to him, from the intelligence report, that Mbabazi wants to contest. If really Mbabazi wanted to contest, if really Museveni is talking about democracy, if really Museveni had a wish to transition power, this would have been the opportunity. Because Mbabazi has been his blue-eyed boy. He's been so loyal. He said it again and again and again. And so who would have been the best person to hold his interest than Mbabazi, to whom he should hand over?
But it
So
seems like...
if he is resisting that too,
Right.
then I don't think he...
So you're saying if he appears willing to crush his own prime minister, who's been with him from the very beginning, it's unlikely that anybody else would be acceptable.
I don't think so.
So, quite frankly, what you're saying is that things are potentially going to be challenging.
They are going to be challenging, but I think the most important thing for me, the message is Ugandans have suffered a lot. We've had a lot of violence. We have lost so many people, even under Museveni. We cannot afford to have more bloodshed. The opposition really needs to come together. I know if there is, if something happens, I know that there will be, in the nick of a minute, there could be some violence, but we should never, ever preach violence. Trust me, I never had my youth because of the violence in Uganda. My father lost his 2 brothers due to violence in Amini's government. And my father's cousin, who owned a bus company, was disappeared during Amini's government. People have suffered a lot.
So you think the memory of that violence
should be enough to stop us from allowing history to repeat itself.
Do you think the President Museveni, General Museveni, might take advantage of that?
I don't think so. I don't think he has, because many people have suffered too during his reign.
So you're saying people, even though they may not want violence, at some point, if they really
That's what
want change,
human nature does. When you keep on pushing people and pushing people, eventually there will be a reaction. And look at what happened in the Arab Spring. Those are the kind of things which pushed people to the edge. But I hope Museveni is smart enough to
forced
understand
Mubarak
that.
out.
Yes, and forced out Mubarak, forced out, Ali of
Tunisia, right?
It was very sad. I knew Mubarak personally. I was very saddened by that. But some of these elders, they could be statesmen and just step away and then stay to advise the country.
Right. But you seem to suggest that Museveni has crossed that line. Let me ask you this. If you had a choice, would you have him be held accountable for some of the many alleged crimes that he commissioned? Or would you, in the interest of a peaceful transition, offer amnesty to General Museveni?
Well, I wouldn't do that as a person alone because there are so many Ugandans who must have suffered. Even if I chose that, I would give him amnesty. There are people who probably want to raise their voices. And then in democracy, you don't just decide things one side as a person. It has to be a collective decision.
Do you
But
think the collective would be willing to entertain that idea?
well, we'll cross the bridge when the time comes, Milton, because Ugandans have really suffered. That's a fact. But I think for us, for me as a person, I would really preach peace.
Yeah. Okay, now we are winding out of time, but I remember in our first show and the second show, when you were first appointed Minister of Gender and Social Services, and you were given the portfolio to manage the National Social Security Fund, and you were in the company of the Attorney General, the late Attorney General, Francis Ayume, who warned you at that first meeting that even though you may go there and stop the corruption at the National Social Security Fund, even if you succeeded, it could still come back to bite you. And you implied that he suggested that whatever troubles there were at the National Social Security Fund, it would be traced back to the boss.
Yeah.
And you meant General Museveni. Now, as we know, former Attorney General Ayume died under circumstances that many people still question. Can you tell us briefly the circumstances?
Well,
what was the official version, and what are your own thoughts?
Well, the official version was that his car had an accident when he was returning from Kinyara Sugar Works to Kampala, because he was the one heading the constitutional reform, and he was the one presenting the memo to cabinet in the morning, and the information we got was that the Prime Minister kept on asking him to come back, even though it was very late. And
who was the Prime Minister at that time?
Apollo Nsibambi. And of course, he never arrived in Kampala. The vehicle crashed on the way. And it is a very sad thing because he was a very, very dedicated person, and I think a leader from northern Uganda. And we are still saddened by what happened. For me, I think if we do have a good transition, we should have an investigation into how this accident happened and why.
Did anybody ever see the car wreck?
No, I never saw the car wreck. I only saw it in the newspapers when I was out here. I never saw it. It was supposed to be a white Pajero. I never saw it. It was never shown to cabinet.
Do any of his family members or any of his colleagues that perhaps you spoke with,
Not
anything
that I
bothered
know of.
them that they would like to be looked into further?
Well,
Well, I see this is affecting you.
yeah, it
very-
is
because you were
something.
close to him.
Yeah,
So
it's something really. It's a sad thing. Yeah.
okay, now and finally, in the last few seconds we have, I understand you are now a member of the FUF, Freedom and Unity Front. Is that correct?
That's very true. I've joined FUF in my own right, even though recently in the Observer they said I was following Sejusa. I'm not following Sejusa. I've actually joined FUF in my own right.
Okay, so we look forward to having you again on a future show.
Thank
You're
you
always
very
very
much.
informative.
Thank you.
you, viewers.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you next week when we discuss Gabon in Follow the Money. Thank you so much.
Thank you.